Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day. And today we're going to be talking about a tweet from the Wizard101 dev account that came out a few days ago. And it's a little bit cryptic, and I wanted to break down what it means because I think that it could mean a lot for the game across many levels. So here's the tweet. What you see on the screen, it was put out a while ago. This is literally a dev-run account, so this is straight from the people that designed this game. And basically, they're talking about how they've heard our feedback, and they're going to do two major changes in an upcoming update. One of them is to change how Novus gear works in terms of drop rates. And the other thing, which is very cryptic in my opinion, is a whole host of apparent changes to gear ranging from level 50 all the way to level 160. I want to talk about what I think will happen for both of these, and hopefully, you know, just give my feedback, give my takes, get y'all to have y'all's opinions heard. The first point, I think that's definitely the more straightforward of the two. I don't know if y'all have been aware of the situation when it comes to how drops work in Novus, but one of the biggest criticisms is that there's a gigantic lack of pity system. And that's because both the Aeon gear and the Eternal gear in general, basically, they require a school-specific tier 2 piece in order to craft them. If I wanted to make, for example, my Fire Aeon cape, I needed a Masterpiece Fire robe. That's the tier 2 Fire robe in order to craft it. Now, what I think is going to happen, based on the hints that we've had, is the pity system will make it so that if you have multiple pieces of tier 2 gear, then you'll be able to make any piece of Eternal or Aeon gear, which is tier 1, on any school. Now, my big concern about this is how many pieces of tier 2 non-school specific gear will you need to craft main tier 1 gear. I made a whole video talking about this, how the change that they could make could actually be worse. This was based on a very, very small clip from one of the devs a little bit earlier. They were talking about some outrageous number, like 7 pieces of Masterpiece gear to craft 1 piece of Aeon gear or 1 piece of Eternal gear. I think that's remarkably punishing, and very, very frankly, if you haven't made it to the end on any of your wizards, right? If you're one of those slower questers, it's going to punish you more than anybody, because by the time you get your gear, everyone else would have already crafted it with a much easier system. Introducing that type of disparity, especially this late after the Novus update, I just don't see it doing more good than harm. I think the maximum pieces of tier 2 gear you should need to craft 1 piece of tier 1 gear should be like 3, not 7. I hope that they think about that, because otherwise the grind is just like, I guess it's limited, it's capped at a certain amount, but it's still so excessive that honestly, I just don't think it helps the people that this update might be aiming to help. Now, the other point of this first part of the tweet, right? They're introducing a better pity system, but also they're just going to increase the drop rates. I feel like for the ring, the Athame boss, wands, hats, everything, like, I feel like whatever you're farming for, I feel like the drop rate of getting something should be very, very high. I just think that even if the drop rate is high, because you still need quite a bit of it to craft something, or there, you know, there are 7 schools of drops to get, I don't think they're going to lose anything by making drop rates higher on those bosses. So if anything, it should be a more rewarding farming experience. That's what I'm hoping for. Now let's get into the juiciness, which is honestly what is more intriguing to me. And that's the fact that they're also going to be tweaking stats at level 50, level 100, level 150, and level 160. Now that can mean a lot of things. Here's what I hope it means. 1, even though it's not mentioned in the tweet, I hope the pins get a second look at. I feel like the sword pins, yes, they're really, really good when it comes to the damage. It's really, really nice. But the 5 pierce that you get on Myth and Fire are basically just as good as it gets. You can't get more than 5 pierce, and you actually can't get more than 4 pierce on every other school with these. So even when you have 6 pins, your pierce is so low that in PvP, it's kind of hard to dual school hit. Additionally, the accuracy that you get makes it so that you need basically 3 power pins. So I'm running 3 power pins right now, and I still have a chance of fizzling my mid spells. I think with 3 power pins, you should be unable to fizzle even the low accuracy secondary spells. So for example, right, a Gambit like Jhin, it has a 25% fizzle chance. If I'm running 3 power pins, I should have 25% accuracy. I'm giving up a lot to run 3 power pins, so I don't see why running 3 barely even gets me the ability to not fizzle. And the same can be said about pierce. When I'm running 6 punishing pins, I'm giving up stuff. So I feel like with 6 punishing pins, I should be closer to 40 pierce, not 33. Obviously, that wasn't mentioned with this little 160 gear change thing, but I really, really hope it's on the docket, because otherwise, things get a little nuts. As in some schools, like maybe Myth or Fire, they actually can very viably dual school, but other schools, especially when their secondary has low accuracy, like Death with Storm or maybe Life with Fire, there's no incentive to really be creative. There's no incentive to create that dynamic meta. There's nothing. I think the power pins and the sword pins need to be much better. The other thing that I will say, I think the mending pins are way too good, especially when you look at life. I think life mending pins, which are 29%, I think they need to take a look at those. I feel like that's just really, really high for a school that just, it can out heal anything. With 29% outgoing on each pin that you can put on, you can run 98% outgoing on a life without giving up any stats. If the mending pins are not something they're willing to look into, I hope that they look at the stats for other gear as well. As in for life, right? If they're characterized by high outgoing and high HP, then why is it that they get so much damage and also so much pierce for a school like that? It just doesn't make sense, right? I feel like their gear is a little unbalanced because your health and outgoing are your really star stats, right? But yet your pierce is way higher than ice and your damage is very comparable to even like offensive schools. Like, it's kind of nuts. And that kind of brings me to the other point, right? When they're looking at refurnishing stats for level 160, they made a template that doesn't seem to really be acting fully. And if you guys are unfamiliar with the template, essentially every school gets 2 stats that it's supposed to specialize in. All of them have 2 stats that are supposed to be something that are good. Balance just gets a healthy mix of everything. And yet there are disparities all over the place. Like, for example, Death being a damage and resist school still gets a ton of pierce. Myth being a pierce and resist school still gets a ton of damage. It's a little odd because I feel like maybe just because of the way different gear sets interact with each other, you just get some slight imbalances, but hopefully that gets squared away because honestly, one thing I can really appreciate is based on just the gear alone, the schools feel very different. It's just, I feel like they could feel a little bit more different if the gear mirrored the strengths of, or the intended strengths anyways, of each school better. That might be a hot take. I would just like to see, like, you know, Death being classified as a damage and resist school and not just having a ton of pierce. And it getting more damage at the expense of pierce would also make it a much better counter against healing schools like Storm and Life like it's supposed to. There's all kinds of, like, you know, like interactions there that I think would work better if they just went more into the strengths in terms of the gear. The one thing that's super underrated about this that I'm very, very excited about is the level 50 gear. I hope that they increase the drop rates of the Malister gear. I feel like that's one concern I've heard a lot. And with the first arc being free and PvP being free to play, it would be really, really cool to see if there's a resurgence of like a completely free to play meta at level 50, especially with accessible gear. That could be a huge important point of focus. It could be a really nice point of entry for a lot of players that want to go further. With all this talk about first arc being free, I think the emphasis on level 50 gear is a really, really good marketing decision. I hope that they prioritize that almost at the same level as everything else. I wouldn't mind level 50 gear getting the same priority and importance placed on it as level 160 gear, simply because of what it represents. It represents a comeback for the PvP scene at low level that we just haven't had in years. I don't know beyond like higher drop rates for Malister gear what I would want to see in level 50 gear. I haven't really done level 50 PvP, but I'm sure there's tons of people that can give feedback on that. Y'all should drop your comments if you do level 50 PvP, what you expect or what you would want from level 50 PvP being updated, especially with gear. I'd love to hear y'all's opinions. Let me know y'all's opinions on all of this, the pins, the gear, the pity system, everything in Novus. I look forward to reading all of your comments. Just wanted to update y'all on a potentially crazy upcoming change. It could really shake things up, make schools feel unique. It could make, like, you know, the grind a little less grindy. Maybe good news, maybe bad news. Let me know what you guys expect in the comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a sub if you're new, and as always, if somebody hasn't told you're awesome today, they doing something wrong, so stay awesome, y'all. And yeah.